Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mindset Forge, a podcast where we discuss the best ideas of humanity, the most useful practices, and the most skillful means for developing a more well-adjusted and adaptive mindset. To do this, I will be discussing latest science, ancient philosophy that has stood the test of time, as well as the thoughts and actions of important historical paragons. The goal is to give you tools and practices and ideas for your self-improvement with the goal of moving ahead the entire humanity. Our discussion will focus on the ideas and practices with the most cash value, so practices that are easy to take up but hold enormous potential. And since most of these practices have to do with changing your thinking and attitudes, they are completely free. Call me Laurent Lohel, I will be your host, and welcome aboard. Also, make sure to like Mindset Forge on Spotify and YouTube, as well as check out our Discord server, where you can find links to my book, which you can buy on Amazon to support my another side enterprise of being a fiction author. Without further ado, let's get to the episode. Mindset Forge, Episode 5. The body, tools and practices using the body to improve different aspects of well-being and performance. Behind your thoughts and feelings, my brother, stands a powerful commander, an unknown wise man. He is called Self. He lives in your body. He is your body. There is more reason in your body than in your best wisdom. And who knows then to what end your body requires precisely your best wisdom. Friedrich Nietzsche, thus spoke Zarathustra, segment called Despisers of the Body. You should be well acquainted with mindfulness and its great benefits by now. With just a little bit of it thrown in, it can reduce stress, help with relaxation and improve attention, and so on. With consistent practice, it has profound potential, and when really making the effort of utilizing it as much of your time as you can, it can have a truly transformative effect if change is something you desire. In the previous episode, we have built up enough foundation for this next series of episodes, which detail various ways we can use the mindfulness of different things, more accurately different aspects that create our so-called self, for our benefit. This episode will focus on mindfulness of the body and related subjects, with future episodes focusing on feelings, perceptions, and so on. If there ever was a series of practical tools that cost nothing yet have the capacity of changing who you are, this is it. We begin this arc of episodes on mindful reforging of ourselves with the body. Why? Because it is the most tangible and obvious one of the bunch, and you can see the effect of the change you are accomplishing from the mirror, even as you feel the benefit on your mental state, alertness, and so on. Because, as detailed before, these different building blocks of our illusion of self all interlink and affect one another. So, with a change in the body, a change in feelings and mental objects and so on can be accomplished. In this episode, there will be a lot of different tricks and practices using the body, as well as just enough of the science in the background of these processes for them to make sense and to prove they are worth a try, and I'm not just making it all up. Let us start with a change you can do right now, this very second, that will immediately start benefiting you in many ways. Straighten your posture. Whether you are sitting or standing, straighten your back and neck. Lift your chin up a bit and pull back your shoulders. I do realize I am starting to sound like your mother or a cranky old school teacher, but they were right to correct you. Let's talk about neck posture. A 2022 systematic review called Forward Head Posture in Young Adults found that 51 to 63% of young adults have forward head posture, an aberrant posture of the neck where the head is chronically craned forward. As you can see, it is very common, and if you do not suffer from it constantly yourself, you are still likely to temporarily lapse into it when on a smartphone or a computer, as digital devices are related to the development of the disorder. A forward head posture is associated with neck pain, migraines, and even has an adverse effect on brain activity involving proprioception, meaning our sense to tell what position our body is in. Even more alarmingly, forward head posture has been shown to even negatively impact our respiratory functions, like the amount of air we can exhale, and increased use of accessory respiratory muscles, which is usually associated with situations the body finds stressful. Breathing is one of the most central functions of our body, and it is strictly regulated, so it is reasonable to assume this difficulty breathing caused by neck posture has a stressful effect on the whole body. Neck posture also makes a great starting example, since it is something that you can change immediately if you just pay the slightest attention, as long as you don't have a skeletal scoliosis, some prior trauma, a developmental malformation, or so on. You can simply correct your posture, and when you keep at it consistently for long enough, your posture will improve. I used to have a slight case of this as well, but 1 year of army training had me standing at attention for so much I came out with my posture fixed, and have since started to mindfully pay attention to my posture and correct it. When you pay attention, you can really use every inch or centimeter of your height instead of slouching. So, having proper posture protects you from pain and from impeded respiratory function. But what other benefits can be derived from this act? And I would just like to point out how little adverse effects there seem to be for posture correction. You might experience some slight discomfort at the start, but avoiding years of neck and head pain is surely worth it. Even twice a week online course has been shown to be effective in posture correction, so you can surely bring about great change with constant practice. This next quote by Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, perfectly encapsulates the essence of this next segment. It goes: "A good stance and posture reflect a proper state of mind." Here we will be looking at the mental effects of having good posture, as well as the effects of one's mental state on posture, so it is a two-way street. In fact, stooped posture is a feature associated with major depressive disorder, along with smaller steps. A research paper called Upright Posture Improves Affect and Fatigue in People with Depressive Symptoms shows that in people with mild to moderate depression, adopting an upright posture increases positive affect, reduces fatigue, and decreases self-focus. Again, as improving your posture is unlikely to have any meaningful harmful effects and is completely free, there is no harm in making sure you sit and stand upright, even if you don't have depression. You will also gain benefit, as proven by a 2015 randomized trial called Do Slumped and Upright Postures Affect Stress Response? I'll just quote their findings from the paper. Quote, the upright participants reported feeling more enthusiastic, excited and strong, while the slumped participants reported feeling more fearful, hostile, nervous, quiet, still, passive, dull, sleepy and sluggish. The upright participants also reported higher self-esteem and reduced fear compared to slumped participants. They spoke more words in total, used fewer first-person personal pronouns, fewer negative emotions and more positive emotion words. Furthermore, a bigger pulse pressure response was seen in the upright participants during the stressor and during recovery than in the slumped participants. So, if you wish to have a little more positivity and energy in your life, all you have to do is straighten your back and neck. So simple, so easy, perfectly free of cost, and the only requirement is that you pay attention to your posture, and that is, are mindful of it. It is this kind of change that builds up the base for something greater. As we have learned from previous episodes, we are comprised of different building blocks and can hardly be seen as independent entities. Many do see us this way, of course, but mostly to their own hindrance. Everything affects something else, if not everything else. This kind of small change, improving your posture, is replacing and improving one of those building blocks, and it will begin a cascade of effects from health to mood and alertness and more. So don't scoff and disregard this advice. I admit it is unlikely to change your life on its own, but it will start building a better foundation for further improvement. Rome wasn't built in a day, they say, and a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But it is not only mood that is improved by upright posture. It can also improve your performance in various ways. A 2018 study published in Neuroregulation showed that people with slouched postures did worse at a math test, especially if they were nervous beforehand. They conclude that students would benefit from studying and going to exams with an upright posture, especially if they feel nervous, and that one of the first things a therapist should consider is posture. If their patient comes in complaining about performance at tests being impaired by anxiety and blanking out. It has also been shown upright posture improves cognitive performance. For example, subjects with upright posture performed faster in reading a task, showed more persistence in another type of task, and had faster processing speed, but not processing accuracy. Your posture also affects your thoughts and memories. It has been shown that positive thoughts and memories come easier when you have an upright posture, while slouch posture is associated with negative thinking. I think unwelcome negative thoughts and brooding over past embarrassments and failures is familiar to us all. Maybe the next time you are mindful enough of the contents of your mind to notice your negative mental space, you try improving your posture to make it easier for positive thoughts to emerge. Another study showed that upright posture also quickens recovery from negative mood, regardless of whether or not they also used cognitive reappraisal, showing that posture and reappraisal might work through different avenues. So, the next time you are feeling down, instead of blaming your surroundings or situation, which is always misplacing the blame, consider that maybe it is your stooped posture that is keeping your spirits down. Especially pay attention and keep up mindfulness of posture while on a computer, tablet or a phone, as those have been shown to be a major player in the deterioration of posture in general. As I write the script of this episode, I pay attention to my posture, which does not distract me from my work at all. On the contrary, every time I start feeling tired, I notice my posture has slumped, and straightening my back and neck brings immediate clarity and energy. I hope you learn to tap into this well of energy and good cheer as well. And thus far we have talked about normal, good posture and the benefits it holds. But what if we go one step beyond, go Super Saiyan with our posture, and adapt a so-called power pose? A power pose means a pose with an almost or completely exaggerated sense of confidence, taking an excessive amount of space. A power pose is wide, tall and proud, a heroic stance that activates feelings and networks of power within us. Its opposite is a low power pose with slouch posture and limbs drawn in close to the body. Does this kind of posing have benefit? According to published science, it certainly seems so. In a meta-analysis from the year 2022 called Dominance and Prestige, meta-analytic review of experimentally induced body position effects on behavioral, self-report, and physiological dependent variables, the researchers divided assumed postures into postures of prestige, meaning upright posture, and postures or poses of power, for example with one hand on hip and chest thrust out like Superman or Wonder Woman, and analyzed existing literature on the effects of such poses. They found that poses had a small to moderate effect on self-reported feeling of power, emotions and self-esteem. This effect was largely independent of context and tested individual differences such as gender, culture, age, so they should benefit anyone regardless of their background and situation. Some research even shows posturing can have an effect on hormone levels, the most studied one being testosterone, but this meta-analysis found no evidence to support this claim. I think this is a good point to mention that power posing sort of blew up in the early 2010s, and there were a lot of claims being made about its great benefit, such as effects of hormones, but it was later found that many of these effects could not be replicated. However, this meta-analysis shows that the practice of posture manipulation has significant subjective effects, which is different from no effect at all. Moving on, another study found that adapting a posture signaling power with limbs moved out from oneself increased one's pain tolerance. This was measured with physical discomfort, but I don't think it is too much of a stretch to think it would also apply to mental distress, so stress and anxiety. Due to the controversy surrounding the replicability of power posing research, let's see what another review taking a look at multiple published studies has to offer us. Named similarly to the previous one we talked about, the paper Dominance or Prestige, a review of the effects of power poses and other body postures, shows that power postures can mainly be used to increase subjective feelings of power and good mood, while the effect on hormones shown in some studies was again found not to stand closer inspection. And what do these power poses look like in the eyes of outside observers? Here too the evidence is inconclusive. Some studies have found that the people with power poses do better in job interviews and would therefore be more likely to be hired, while others have found no such effect. In the romantic context, men and women showing high power postures were ranked higher in attractiveness and did better on speed dates than those with low power poses. It has also been reported that people with high power poses created impressions of competency, admiration, envy, contempt, and less pity in observers than people who displayed low power poses. Although it was later shown that neutral pose was even better when being evaluated for competence. So, to summarize, having a slouch posture is bad from practically every view, from health to subjective feelings and capacities to how it looks to outside observers. Be sure to have an upright posture at all times, which can be accomplished with mindfulness of posture. There's hardly any harm in going one step beyond and assuming a power pose, standing and walking like a proud superhero, and see if this produces a desired effect in you. But if going into a job interview, it is better to assume a neutral pose, which should include proper posture. This time we started with the practical applications by examining the various effects different postures have on a multitude of different variables. Next, let's visit the theoretical background of it all. How and why does this work? That question finds its answers in the field called embodied cognition. In Western tradition, mind and body, matter and spirit, have largely been considered to be two completely different things. The theory of embodied cognition argues against this, and for good reason. After all, our minds that somehow produce our thoughts and emotions were melded by natural selection for the purpose of improving our survival. And out there, in the fields of Serengeti, where our ancestors lived, it was the largest individuals that had the most power, the ones most likely to be leaders and otherwise prestigious members of their group. As such, our brain would come to link tallness and wideness with dominance. The thesis of embodied cognition argues that the avenue from our mind to our body is a two-way street. Feelings generated in the brain cause effects on the body, while bodily experiences give rise to feelings generated in the brain. So, if we adopt a posture that makes us taller and wider, our brain interprets that as a show of dominance, and a feeling of power and self-confidence, good mood are generated. And similarly, if we actually do something that makes us feel dominant, like win in a sports competition, that feeling makes us unconsciously adapt a more powerful pose. We are likely to thrust out our chests and raise our arms above our heads. In research, as mentioned before, it has been shown that slumped posture and slower gait are symptoms of a depressive state, and if a study subject is instructed to assume such a pose or gait, they develop symptoms and states associated with depression. The central thesis of the theory of embodied cognition, embodied emotion, and so on is that mental processes are absolutely not independent of our bodies, but influenced by its capabilities like sensory and motor systems and morphology. How the mental state of someone is reflected in their outward appearance is very old in evolutionary terms. Charles Darwin himself was one of the first to point out how emotions are outwardly expressed in organisms. And Professor Jordan B. Peterson famously pointed out how even lobsters, when defeated, adopt slouched postures. Losers go about slouched, and conversely, a person with a slouched posture feels like a loser. Winners adopt powerful postures, and people with powerful postures consider themselves winners. So stick out your chest and raise your chin and join the winning team. We will return to some other findings of embodiment theory later in this episode. Findings that are a bit more abstract but that have the capacity to blow your mind and really change your view of the world. So stay tuned. But for now, I would like to keep adding to the changes that you can perform right this minute for free and that will still produce great benefit using just your body and your mindfulness of it. We've talked about posture. Let us now turn our heads to another topic, expression. And what is the change I told you you can perform right this minute for your own advantage? Say cheese. The answer is smiling. Yes, it is that simple. Use mindfulness of your expression to plaster a smile on your face. According to embodiment theory, this will make you feel happier and more at ease. And you don't have to take my word for it, or even the word of researchers. Try it out for yourself right now. If you still need some convincing, let me walk you through some established research. While I talk, keep that smile on your face and make sure your back is straight and your neck is upright. Or go beyond and assume a power pose. Thrust your chest out a bit, widen your shoulders and lift your chin like there was a string pulling your head up. A nice but taut string at the top of your head, not like a noose. I think imagining that would send the wrong message to your central nervous system. But I digress. Research has shown that smiling and laughing, even when forced to do so, improves one's mood. Another study with the name Grin and Bear It shows us that smiling quickens our recovery from stress. In this study, people were stressed either with tasks where they had to use their non-dominant hand, viewed through a mirror to perform a task requiring accuracy and speed while being given impossible standards to meet. And afterwards they had their hand submerged in very cold water. Also, the subjects held chopsticks in their mouth, which, depending on their orientation, made their faces assume either a neutral pose, a slight smile, or a Duchenne smile, which also recruits the muscles around the eyes and is considered a true smile. Half of smiling participants were told to smile, so they were aware of their smile, while the other half was unconscious of their smile. The heart rates of the smilers returned to normal faster than the non-smilers, and the best recovery was achieved by those who were aware of their true smile. A physiological explanation for this effect has been theorized in another paper. There is such a thing as the oculocardiac reflex, oculo meaning eye and cardiac meaning heart. In essence, muscle contraction around the eye, like for example in true smile, causes the trigeminal nerve, which innervates the area, to stimulate the vagal nerve, which has many functions, one of which is to regulate heart rate. Quite astonishing when you think about it. I've heard that experienced yogis and the like can lower their heart rate consciously, but now you can take at least some control of your heart, since anybody can contract the muscles around their eyes. So smile away. But our expression also influences how we experience things in the outside world. In a study that is a classic in its field, researchers Strack, Martin and Stepper investigated how funny people found cartoons while holding a pen in their mouth. One group had the pen positioned so it either activated or inhibited facial muscles associated with smiling. In accordance with their hypothesis, the group whose smiling muscles were contracted and in this study it was not pointed out to them that they were in essence smiling, found the cartoons funnier. Adding a little bit of humor to your morning cartoons is all fine, but as we later learn, the morphology and capacity of our bodies affects how we experience the world in surprising ways, ones that really give one a reason to think about one's physical state. Facial expression also seems to have some of that same effect as influencing how we experience the world, as shown in this next study. As stated before, smiling was associated with faster recovery from stressful and even painful stimulus. But facial expression also influences how we experience that pain in the first place. In a study called Smile or Grimace Through the Pain, it was shown that people who had a Duchenne smile on their faces during a vaccine-like injection reported 40% less pain than those with neutral expressions. Grimacing people reported 39% less pain, and those with neutral smiles reported 26% less pain than the neutral-faced group. In this study, the grimacing group also reported less stress after the injection, but their heart rate did not differ significantly from the neutral group, while the Duchenne smile group had a significantly more relaxed heart rate. So, grimacing seems to decrease the amount of stress one is aware of, but the body still reacts with the same amount of stress. This is probably because grimacing is associated with painful and even dangerous situations, and so it makes sense from natural selection point of view that the body would keep the stress response running. Makes one think if this could be consciously leveraged. When you know you are going to be stressed but need to relax, you could opt to smile consciously, but when you go under stress and actually need to perform physically or in another way that benefits from increased heart rate, you could choose to grimace instead. Up to you. I don't see how anybody could harm themselves doing this. After saying something like that, someone is sure to prove me wrong, but oh well. A similar effect was shown in a paper taking a look into social ostracism, which causes mental pain instead of physical. In this study, the ostracized individuals spontaneously showed more smiling even when feeling negative emotions. This is considered to be a strategy of emotional self-regulation. Another paper took a look at how facial expressions of pain affected the experienced pain and in fact found out that a painful expression increased the amount of pain the subject felt. The purpose of the expression of pain is probably to attract the attention and help of other people, but it seems to happen at the cost of making the pain increase as well. So, from this point of view, smiling through the pain might be the better option. It will lessen the amount of pain there is in the first place, as that is only a subjective experience. There's a lot more research we could go through. In fact, a meta-analysis from the year 2019 analyzed 138 studies that manipulated facial feedback and collected self-reports on emotions. Let's not get into all that detail and just conclude that this meta-analysis showed that the feedback of one's own body of facial expression influenced emotional experience. So, thus far we have established how posture and expression improve mood and pain tolerance, amongst other things. But what further benefits can be gleaned from these practices? Just like emotion, memory also has embodied effects. One study showed that when one first performed expressions and postures related to some emotional state, so for example happiness and anger, They were then asked to recall memories based on some neutral words, for example 3. Those who had been primed with happy postures and expressions remembered more happy memories than the angry group. And there's more. Neurological research has long been done based on people who have brain lesions for different reasons. A lesion destroys that part of the brain, so researchers can see what happens without it. In an analogous manner, research in the field of facial feedback studies have evaluated people who receive botulinum injections to their facial muscles, paralyzing them. In one study, this was performed on the corrugator supercilium muscles, which are involved in generating angry and sad expressions. When these people with knocked out facial muscles of anger and sadness read paragraphs of text with angry or sad content, they processed them slower than earlier, while their ability to process happy text remained the same. And this shows how our ability to express some emotion influences our understanding of that emotion in the first place. And that is why there are numerous papers on botulinum treatment of depression. It has been shown in large review articles that smoothing out frown lines, which make one look sad and worried, make people feel less depressed. By paralyzing the muscles that express sadness and worry, we lose some of our ability to experience those emotions, which leads to improved mood. I am not aware that this is used in practice to treat depression, at least not in my country, where depression is very prevalent. William James, a renowned psychologist and philosopher, stated way back in 1884 that, quote, refuse to express a passion and it dies, end quote. Seems like he hit the nail on the head, although he did go a little overboard when he rather famously claimed that the only way emotions arise is because of the events of our body. If that was the case, we would feel fear every time we went for a run. What we have discussed thus far have been effects of posture and facial expression on subjective experiences of the person performing these postures and expressions. But what is the effect on outside observers? We did mention how poses affect ratings of competency and so on, but I think many are interested to know that smiling has also been shown to increase the perceived attractiveness of the smiler. The evidence is clearer for females, where it has been shown more conclusively that smiling improves perceived attractiveness. In males, the matter seems to be more complicated. Men with neutral expressions were rated by women as more fitting for short-term relationships, while those with smiles on their faces were considered more warm and trustworthy, and as such more suitable for long-term relationships. And the men considered more fitting for long-term relationships were also considered more attractive by the women. Another study used a computer program to generate faces that varied in attractiveness. Then those generated faces were given either a neutral expression or a smile of varying intensity. When these artificially beautiful faces were given to real people for review, they judged less beautiful faces with smiles as more attractive than the more beautiful ones with neutral expressions, and this applied to both men and women. That should give you something to smile about. Is there ever a good reason to frown or adapt a closed body posture? You would probably do well to generally use smile and open body posture for general well-being. However, it has been shown in studies that when faced with negative emotions from an outside source, Embodying negative emotion with closed body posture and sad facial expressions boosts creativity. When facing positive emotion from an outside source, embodying positive emotions has the same effect. But if the outside emotion and embodied emotion are different, for example, watching a sad video with a smile and open posture, then the creative problem solving is not as strong. In short, compatibility between embodied emotion and implicit emotion stimulates creativity. Mood, creativity, pain tolerance, attractiveness, cognitive effects. We really have gone through a lot of ways proper posture and expression can benefit you if you use them mindfully. One of the central practices of mindfulness is mindfulness of breathing, and I originally thought I would delve into this area as well, but I think that would be too much. I'll leave breath-related practices for a later episode. Feel free to research the subject on your own if you wish. In the meantime, you might want to look into physiological size and how to use the diaphragm while breathing. Also, make sure to practice mindfulness of breath meditation. Like many other things talked about in Mindset Forge, it is a stepping stone into something greater. Next, I think I will just mention simple tricks and practices that have to do with using the body for some specific goal, while not going too much into detail about the specifics. In the motor cortex, all the areas of the body are represented side by side. It has been noted that activating one muscle can boost the strength of another muscle, even remote ones. This phenomenon is called irradiation, and one explanation for it is that muscle activation sort of irradiates to other areas in the motor cortex. For example, one study showed that leg extension torque was increased 10% if the subjects also clenched their jaw during the movement, and adding powerful gripping and contraction of abdominal muscles to the mix afforded a 14.6% increase in torque. So, even when performing isolation exercises at the gym, it is beneficial to concentrate on other muscles just enough to boost your performance. Speaking of the jaw, it has been shown that having the jaw either clenched or open improves postural stability in comparison with resting jaw. Might be good to remember if you find yourself on uncertain footing. Just make sure you don't cramp up your jaw with all this clenching. And for something completely different, if your nose gets blocked, you can press the bridge of your nose between your eyes, between your fingers. And if it works in your case, you will feel your nose open up in about 30 seconds. You might wonder how this is related to anything, and I do admit I just remember this one on the spot, but breathing is so important for many aspects of our being that it is worth our time to make sure it is as effortless as can be. As promised, some little tricks that can be applied instantly and for free, and that help and boost performance in different situations. I did speak of a more mind-blowing ways our bodies shape our cognition, and I saved that for last. What we are about to discuss might appear unbelievable, but it is established by science. Next, I am going to discuss how our bodies influence the way we understand and experience the world around us. After this, it is clear that we all live in different worlds determined by our bodies and other factors that are beyond the scope of this episode and will be discussed later. There is an episode on mindfulness of perception coming up, where this theme would sit just as well, but let us talk about it here. For starters, since the brain has developed for survival and can only affect the things via the body influences the way we perceive the world. This shows even in our language. consider metaphors. For example, we grasp ideas, we can walk a fine line or push someone away. An entity with no hands or the ability to walk would not see things this way, and a creature with no eyes would not understand seeing. You might not find this too interesting unless you are an English teacher, but how about this next piece of research? How in shape you are physically influences how you perceive the world around you. In a study called Visual Motor Recalibration in Geographical Slant Perception, it was shown that study subjects who were either carrying a heavy backpack, fatigued, elderly, or out of shape perceived the steepness of an upcoming hill as greater than the control group. One way to interpret this result is that by allowing yourself to be in poor shape dooms you into a world of steep hills and difficult physical obstacles, while someone with better physical shape quite literally sees the world as less obstructed and taxing. Change yourself to change the world, some New Age mystic might say. One of the many reasons why everybody should aim to be in good shape and get physical exercise of their preference. The examples of how different movements and postures affect our cognition and attitudes are almost too many to list. For example, if we are made to nod, we are more likely to like a message, or like a pen we have been given and remember positive words we have been told to remember, while the reverse goes for shaking our heads, which makes us dislike the message, the pen, and remember negative words. It has also been shown that making a pushing away motion makes us more averse to something, while pulling motions make us more favorable towards things, like in a few studies where images were rated by pushing or pulling a lever. Also, we are worse at recalling manual action sequences if our hands are behind our backs. So hand placement affects not only our preferences but our memory. The point here is not strictly to find a way to use this information for your leverage, but to show how everyday, unnoticed, unconscious effects change your feelings and perception. The world and yourself is not as objective as we usually consider or would like it to be. I don't think there is any research on the application of these findings anyway, but you can study them on yourself if you wish. This would be accomplished by staying mindful of your postures, gestures, feelings and mental objects, and how one of them leads to another, a task that would require advanced skill in mindfulness, but if accomplished, one could certainly say they have been at least partially aware of their impulses. Furthermore, embodiment might be how empathy is formed. It has been shown we mimic the movements and expressions of people around us and who we interact with, and as we have learned, performing those motions stimulates the feeling or mental state behind it in us. One study even suggests that this mimicry is the reason why couples who have been married for a long time grow to resemble each other. We have again traversed a lot of ground, to use an embodied metaphor, in this episode, discussing various ways embodiment affects us and how we can leverage it. But what is the neuroscientific basis of embodiment? In other words, how does just thinking about something produce a physical effect, and why would a movement affect mental processes such as mood and cognition? We will go deeper into this in the upcoming Mindset Forge episode on mindfulness of mental objects, but to preview, our brains use the same neural pathways to imagine experiences as it uses to make sense of the information coming from our sense organs. So sensing, remembering and imagining all work mostly the same in our brains. When we think or reminisce about something, those networks are activated as if we were experiencing it directly, leading to a physical response. I think this is a natural spot to end this episode. In a previous episode, we talked about how our body is one of the parts that makes up the illusion of ourself, and how my view is that to improve our so-called self, we need to improve the parts. In this episode, we discussed in detail the various benefits that can be gleaned immediately with mindful use of our bodies, namely good posture, even an exaggerated power pose, and a happy facial expression. These were shown to influence our mood, cognition, self-perceived energy, and so on. With mindfulness of our various different aspects, we can will ourselves to do better. For example, straighten our posture, since there is hardly any benefit to stooped posture, and the only reason we adopt such a posture is that we are not paying attention, we are not awake, not mindful. We then forayed into the various ways our bodies influence how we perceive the world without our recognition. To give you some food for thought, if you want to make hills appear less steep, get in better shape, and if you want to find more humor in your surroundings, smile. This ties well back to Buddhism, where one of the central tenets is that there is no objective world, only illusions that we make up for ourselves. I doubt it is a coincidence how, in Buddhism, the proper posture during meditation is highly important, and Zen masters like Thich Nhat Hanh often instruct their pupils to smile during specific parts of their sitting meditation practice. In addition to Eastern philosophies, a Western thinker who would have been quite interested in the theory of embodiment is Friedrich Nietzsche, who considered that our thoughts, personality and so on arise from our diet and other physical determinants. He held that our thoughts arise from our bodies and said that, for example, truly great ideas are conceived by walking. Charles Darwin himself believed in a similar notion. Sometimes in the future there will be episodes dedicated to both Buddhism and Nietzsche to glean what I consider to be the most valuable and useful pieces of their philosophies. I do have a lot of different episodes envisioned, don't I? I was originally hoping to tackle many more subjects in this episode, like breathing, nutrition and gut microbiota, supplementation and so on, but I think this episode is long enough as it is. Those subjects and many others will have to wait until a further episode. Besides, if there is too much information on one go, some of it is sure to be forgotten. So, I hope from now on every listener of Mindset Thoughts will go about with their backs straight, chin held high, and a confident smile on their face. In this episode we gained a sneak peek into how we perceive the world and how we are nowhere near as objective as we usually think. More on this in the next episode of the Mindset Thoughts, which discusses mindfulness of perceptions and how we can make use of our perception. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Mindset Thoughts. I hope you found it informative and the lessons and practices spoken in it relevant to your situation. I also hope you found it as entertaining to listen as I found making it to be. If you found it beneficial, be sure to follow Mindset Forge on Spotify as well as on YouTube, where you can also give us a thumbs up. Also, make sure to check out our Discord server for further discussion, where you can contact me directly. Links in description and channel information. There you can also find the link to my book, which I have self-published on Amazon, called Death Tribe. If speculative dystopian near-future sci-fi sounds like a cup of tea, getting the book is a great way to support my work as an author. So have a nice day and memento cerebrum formare.